are you stressed? This is a tricky one because it's like asking a fish to define water in many cases. It's all you've ever known as long as you remember, and so you don't really realize. So how can you tell if you're stressed? Well, of course, there's blood tests, but even they're not super reliable. The best one for that is cortisol, first thing in the morning cortisol. But what really matters is actually your adrenaline and noradrenaline, and that's something that's hard to test for because it's a neurotransmitter more than it is a hormone, and it fluctuates wildly, basically. So hormone like cortisol fluctuates more over the course of hours or days, so it's easier to test for. Noradrenaline, you can have 10 times as much in 1 minute than you do the next, so it's harder to test for. So to some degree, it's got to be experiential, right? And so one great test of how stressed you are is really simple. Sit down in an environment with no input whatsoever. No one around you, door shut, headphones on, blindfold on if necessary, because you can't keep, the outside stimulus out otherwise. Sit in a chair and attempt to stop thinking for 20 minutes. If you get racing thoughts, if your to-do list is on your mind, if this thing that's upset you, all the rest of it, that's a classic sign of stress. This is most people, by the way, I realize that, but most people are in a state of stress to some degree or another. And this is something that's relatively recent in our history. Yes, I realize most of your ancestors may not have meditated, but most of your ancestors absolutely did sit silently doing nothing for extended periods of time throughout their evolution. Hunters would go out and then they would be aware of their environment, but they would be basically doing nothing, no input, just watching for that little noise or, quick something. And, people in general, before the invention of electric light and all the rest of it, a lot of time they would be in darkness for a lot of the year. Like there just was a lot of sitting around doing nothing. Very few people can do that these days. A lot of daydreaming, a lot of, considering, whatever you want to call it. We don't do that these days. We constantly have input, right? We're constantly doing stuff or we're having stuff put into us. And so that's a really great test, how easily you can just sit and do nothing. The thing that allows you to sit and do nothing is a neurotransmitter called GABA. When GABA is high, it means that you can just go into a peaceful, centered state and relax. Most people, their cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, maybe even dopamine, but more the first three, overpower that GABA. It's all about a ratio. So stress chemicals are really high, GABA not that high, and so their mind will be racing. Maybe they'll even be fidgeting, itching, can't sit still, can't da-da. But at the very least, the mind will be da-da-da-da-da, talking. They can't just calm down. So that's a great example of stress. Another example of stress is how reactive you are to things. So most people think of stress as something that is going on outside of them. But it's true, of course, really terrible things can happen, that it is justifiable to feel upset. But I think most of us with some degree of self-reflection, we can admit that a lot of the time we get upset about things, and later we go, oh, that wasn't really such a big deal. Why did I get so upset about that? Why did I say that to that person? Why did I react that way? Or maybe you don't ever lash out or whatever, but you hold it all in, right? And that will show up as muscular tension in the body. So chronic pain is another potential, manifestation of stress in people. But I think the simplest one is the sitting silently one.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I hear a lot about racing thoughts, and there's a big out there about, people not being able to sleep or waking up and not being able to go back to bed. But I want to digress and go back to the summary. So you said
that's another one.
Yeah.
Yep. But sometimes, like a lot of time, that's actually a sign of stress. If you sit there and you fall asleep, that's actually a sign of stress because it means you're so exhausted that as soon as you remove the input, your body's like, right, I'm going to shut down. Your brain's like, right, I'm going to shut down because I got a moment's peace. So that's also a sign of stress. So falling asleep isn't necessarily a sign that you're not stressed. It's really not being able to be present and centered and aware without falling asleep and without having racing thoughts. That's the key. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Rejuvenate podcast. If you want to watch the full episode that came from, just click on the link above. Or if you just want to watch our latest video, then click the link below. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you.